Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today to learn more about our Eyes on the Lake outreach team. I'm Courtney Bauman. I'm the engagement manager with Keep Tahoe Blue. Today, I also have Tom Booth here with the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and he's really involved in the Lake Tahoe Invasive Species Program. And we are just so excited to talk to you about this outreach team. We piloted this program last year and had really great success and are excited to expand that this year. So the agenda that we have today is first, we're going to talk a little bit about the need for outreach, specifically with aquatic invasive species. What are aquatic invasive species and why are they bad for Lake Tahoe? We'll get a little bit into clean, drain, and dry and what that means. We'll go over some of our existing defenses that we have to protect Lake Tahoe from aquatic invasive species. And then we'll get into what your responsibilities will be as a volunteer and part of the Eyes on the Lake outreach team. We'll get some tips from our roving inspector, and then we'll talk about next steps. And we will leave some time at the end for question and answers. For the folks online, you can drop those questions in the chat and we will address them at the end. So the need for outreach. People love Lake Tahoe. When you think of Lake Tahoe, what do you think of? The crystal blue, beautiful waters. People come to Lake Tahoe for all sorts of reasons, to come skiing, go hiking, to go paddleboarding or boating on the beautiful waters. And some studies have shown that a lot of people come to Lake Tahoe. Almost 2 million unique individuals come to Tahoe each year. And when you look at the amount of days that they stay, the multiple visits that they come, it's around 15 million visitors days each year. And Lake Tahoe is, pristine. We want to keep it protected, protect all these beautiful things that we love to do in this area. And that's where volunteers like you will come in. Who has heard about the invasive golden mussel? A lot of you folks. Yeah, this is a new aquatic invasive species to the region, and it can do some detrimental damage to our lake, irreversible damage. They're impossible to eradicate once they get in. So really, the need for volunteers and the need for outreach is more important than ever. We really want to make sure that these do not get into Lake Tahoe along with other mussels and invasive species. So what are aquatic invasive species? Aquatic invasive species are organisms that are non-native to the region. They haven't developed and grown with the native wildlife, the flora and fauna in the area. And what really makes them invasive is that they outcompete the natives for resources, things like food, sunlight, water. They have different methods to reproduce really quickly and really frequently, and can make our beautiful blue waters green. Here are some photos of some mussels attached to a boat. So not only can they impact things like recreation and the environment, but they can have huge economic impacts. When you think about Lake Tahoe and the reasons people come there, the skiing, the boating, all of that is at risk if more invasive species get in Lake Tahoe and they spread around the lake. We do currently have some aquatic invasive species that have already found their way into Lake Tahoe. One of them being Eurasian water milfoil. This was the first aquatic invasive species that was discovered in the lake in the early 90s. Both Eurasian water milfoil and curly-leaf pondweed are aquatic plants. And they have really interesting ways on how they reproduce and spread. Eurasian water milfoil specifically spreads through fragmentation. So there are times of the year that it auto fragments, so that just breaks off. And a fragment the size of your fingernail can sprout roots and start a whole new plant, whole new infestation. And when you think about areas on the near shore where these plants are growing, think about boat activity, kayak activity. Those boats are just, chopping up plants and helping it fragment. So we really like to make sure that we're not helping these guys spread. With curly-leaf pondweed, this aquatic plant was discovered around 2003, and it grows these seed structures called turions. And the turions can, if you're paddling through an area and you get some plant wrapped around your paddle and you go to a new area, it can drop those seeds and sprout a new infestation. They're known to grow deeper and in colder waters. So they're a little bit more tolerant to different temperatures. And those turions can winter in freezing conditions. So in areas of the lake that can freeze over, these guys will wait till spring and sprout right up when the conditions are right. So that's what makes curly-leaf pondweed really difficult to manage. We do have a couple of invasive mollusks that are present in Lake Tahoe. The corbicula clams, these were discovered around 2002, and they are filter feeders. So they will take things in the water column, eat them, and then condense that nutrients into little nutrient packets and can fuel things like algae growth, which at high levels can cause things like harmful algal blooms. If anyone's walked the beaches after a storm on the South Shore, you see a lot of these white shells washed up. They look white when they're dead, but they actually burrow in the sand. So it's really, really hard to estimate the extent of their populations. Lake Tahoe as a whole has tried different control methods using thick rubber mats to try to manage them. But it's really difficult to know if you've gotten all of them because they burrow in the sand. And they reproduce by releasing their gametes in the water column. This will be really important when we talk later about how to prevent the spread of invasive species, but their babies are microscopic and can live in the water column. So really important not to move water from one place to another. New Zealand mud snails were discovered in 2023, so just a few years ago. And this was a really big deal for Lake Tahoe because it's the first aquatic invasive species that has been discovered since the watercraft inspection station, which started around 2008. And we think that these really tiny New Zealand mud snails, they're smaller than a grain of rice, likely got into Lake Tahoe from non-motorized watercraft because all motorized watercraft has to go through an inspection and decontamination. And the thing about New Zealand mud snails is they're not only tiny, but they can clone themselves. So they don't need a male to reproduce. Most invasive populations are all female. And so if just one tiny New Zealand mud snail got into Lake Tahoe, it multiplies and multiplies and multiplies and can look something like this photo. And each one of those little dots is a New Zealand mud snail. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about aquatic invasive species that are not currently present in Lake Tahoe, and we don't want them to be. We're trying to keep them out. So zebra and quagga mussels are invasive all across North America. They're not native to the North American region. And similar to the corbicula clams, they reproduce in the water column. So they have those microscopic babies called veligers. And the real issue with mussels is they have what's called byssal threads, and they can attach to not only things like boats, pilings, water intake infrastructure, but some of them can even attach to like super hard surfaces. So they're really, really hard to get rid of. They grow in clusters and can cause a lot of damage that is very costly to remove and manage. And they're shelled animals, they're mollusks. Adults can survive out of water for up to 30 days. So they just close themselves up and can survive for long periods of time. And some estimates have predicted it could cost over $20 million annually to manage these in the basin, and would be impossible to eradicate if they got into Lake Tahoe. Another species, which golden mussel, a lot of you said that you have heard of, this is the newest aquatic invasive species to California, and it's spreading quickly. So the golden mussel was discovered in the San Joaquin, Sacramento Delta area just in October of 2024. And it's the first time ever that they were discovered in North America. And they've been called quagga and zebra mussels on steroids. So not only do they reproduce really quickly and cause a lot of damage, but they can even attach to things like rocks. They can reproduce more quickly. And what's really, really concerning is that they can tolerate lower calcium. So when we think of Lake Tahoe, we have naturally low nutrients, low calcium. These guys could survive. And so just in less than 2 years, they've spread all the way down to San Diego. And this is all along the California Water Project. So there's a lot of waterways and agriculture that are going to be impacted by this. And Lake Tahoe is just 3 hours away. So the threat is very high, higher than ever. And again, here's just some more photos of what those mussels can do. I don't know about you, but I don't want to recreate on, jump into Lake Tahoe on rocks that are covered in this, or have my boat covered in this. It looks like a mess. So now I'm going to bring up Tom, and he's going to talk a little bit about some ways that you, as volunteers, when you're talking with the public, ways that people can make sure that they're not accidentally transporting aquatic invasive species.
Thanks, Courtney.
Yeah.
Volume good, Hector? I work for the Tahoe Regional Planning Agency, and I oversee the boat inspection program here in the basin. I've been involved with invasive species for 30 some years. So yeah, I'm absolutely an invasive species nerd. And we're going to talk about clean, drain, and dry. It's really a simple concept. That's what we've been talking to people about since our program started 17 years ago. Clean, drain, dry is the simplest thing you can do to not have vectors on your stuff, which then could spread invasive species, and I'll get into that. Cleaning is pretty obvious. Clean the dirt, debris, animals, and plants. Draining is draining all of the compartments and getting all the water out of it that can be drained. And then the dry part is exactly that. Once the water is drained, there's no more moisture. As she said, these things are microscopic. They live in the water column. They could be in a cup of water or half a cup of water, a teaspoon of water, and they can stay alive for a while because they have the ability to shut themselves down in those little bits of water. And what we look for at our boat inspection stations are mud, plants, animals, and water. Everything, all those things listed are vectors to spread invasive species. Even sand with the New Zealand mud snails, every boat, every kayak, paddleboard that you drag along the beach to undo it or drag it to your car, the snails are so small. Some of them are as small as the grains of sand, so you don't know if you have a snail in that sand or not. So it's best to just clean it right there, towel it off, blow it off, and it'll get to the CD3 machines. Mud is a big thing for sure in some of the creeks and in some of the places along Tahoe, like this shallow area along Reagan Beach. The water, again, that's probably the biggest threat we have because they hold things that are not seen. The animals, the one thing that we learned about the snails is that they can cling to plants and that's how they move. The photo that she showed was a chunk of algae, but we've seen particles of milfoil floating in the water with snails on them. And they also crawl up the plants, and that's how they disperse themselves because they don't crawl very fast. I think it's like a meter every few days because they're just teeny little things. And that's how they kind of disperse themselves. They crawl to the top, release, and float. So really simple concepts. Pretty much anything that's on your watercraft is, oh, thank you, a threat. And so the biggest, so Courtney mentioned we have AIS in Lake Tahoe. Fallen Leaf and Echo Lakes do not have bad things in them. So it's really important, and a big message that we're going to be sharing with people that you're talking with is if you go from Tahoe on Sunday and you want to go to Fallen Leaf Lake on Monday, clean, drain, dry is absolutely essential because you could be spreading things from Tahoe to there. It's not the same thing if you're going from Fallen Leaf or Echo Lakes to Tahoe because there's not a threat up there. That's a really important concept we learned last year at Elks Club when everyone was putting in to float the river, that not a lot of people realized that there was a difference and that they should do something different when they're going from lake to lake. So that's a really big point. The point of this map is basically showing if it's a red line, it has bad stuff. If it's yellow, it has less bad stuff. If it has no line other than the light blue line, it's basically free of aquatic invasive species. So it's projecting the movement of what we want people to do before they go. And we need your help. I mean, this is an intake pipe. Somewhere you can see how they clog up. It's like your arteries clogging with calcium or, calcium, I guess. It just restricts the flow. So that's going to have impacts on the bottom line of generating water power or bringing in water for canning purposes or anything related to industry or agriculture. I'm personally shocked that you saw that spread of golden mussels going down from the Delta down to San Diego through the aqueduct. They haven't spread outside of connected waters, but I'm really surprised that the state of California isn't just freaking out because the potential impacts to the agricultural community are huge. Like every little irrigation pipe could look like that and potentially close down. This is from my home state of Wisconsin. I'm so glad that you had this. This is Lake Winnebago. These are zebra mussels. As she said, they're awful. You don't want to recreate in this stuff. This is the beach, right? Can you imagine Tahoe beaches looking like that? They're razor sharp, so you can't walk on them because your feet will get sliced up. But I have firsthand experience with that. Everything that you touch is covered with them and they cut your hands. Once they get to the beach and they're dying, the flesh inside rots. And it is the worst smell you can imagine. It's like rotting fish, but in my opinion, worse because they're, the way they filter, like they have a lot of things in them. But yeah, so that is why we're trying so hard to keep these things out of here. Some of the things that we are doing, we have the Tahoe Keepers program. I normally don't represent by wearing swag, or not swag, but company shirts or whatever, but I thought it was appropriate today. So the Tahoe Keepers program is a volunteer stewardship program where you sign up to be a Tahoe keeper, which means you understand the principles of what it is to be clean, drain, dry. Every time you paddle or any water sport that's non-motorized, you are signing up to say, I understand, I will comply, I'm going to do my part to keep Tahoe free of invasive species. It's for paddlers, kayakers, anglers, even the dinghies that people row out to their big boat that's on a buoy that falls into the Tahoe Keepers. You basically watch a training video, take a quiz, and then you're certifying yourself, your self-knowledge of, I understand those principles of clean, drain, and dry, and you're going to hear clean, drain, dry probably 10 more times. It's a simple message. The whole entire country mostly in the West for sure, but the entire country, scattered states in the East, use that message. So it's universal, it's super simple, and I like the action base of it. It's like you're cleaning, you're draining, you're drying. So from a broader picture, back in 2008, when quagga mussels were discovered in Lake Mead, it was the first time they moved from the Great Lakes. They came into our country in the Great Lakes. They moved to Lake Mead. All of the West freaked out. Like, what are we going to do? Tahoe Regional Planning Agency had the ability to start an inspection program, a prevention program. And what that means is every single motorized boat that comes into the lake has to be inspected. Then if it's not
Clean, drain, and dry.
clean, drain, and dry, then we would decontaminate those areas that are not clean, drain, and dry. So the anchor locker, if it's got a bunch of dirt in it or some water, we use hot water and decontaminate that to kill anything that's in the mud, plants, animal, or water. After the discovery of golden mussels, we're so concerned about that risk that we are decontaminating every single boat that comes our way, regardless if it's clean, drain, and dry. Because an engine, after it's in a water body, it can hold water inside of it. No matter how much you lower it, there's always a little bit of latent water. So anything that is in touch with the water, that brings water up from the lake into the boat, we're decontaminating that. It's a huge step towards preserving the lake and preventing it, but it's also a lot of work, a lot of time, and it's been great. Like, people haven't complained because the boaters haven't complained because they understand what's at risk. We have 3 stations, one at Spooner Summit on the east shore, Alpine Meadows on the west shore, and in Myers on the south shore. The way it works for the Tahoe Keeper people, because if you don't want to clean, drain, dry your gear after you leave somewhere, if you were in Tahoe on Sunday and you want to go to Fall Leaf on Monday, you can go to these stations and they're going to inspect you and decontaminate you for free, and they're going to take you to the front of the line. So we're doing that to incentivize people to do the right thing, changing their behavior, to understand the importance of where they move, the threat that they pose, and how they can address that. Did I miss anything?
No.
So after the discovery of New Zealand mud snails in 2023, knowing that our inspection program for motorized boats is really, really solid, mandatory inspections. For non-motorized, it wasn't mandatory. They're subject to inspection. So if they were to encounter somebody and it was not clean, drain, and dry, people that had the authority could send them to deny launch and send them to the station. So I've been doing this for 9 years, I think, 8 or 9 years. And we've always recognized that the non-motorized boats are a gap in our efforts because we can't reach everybody. New Zealand mud snail discovery really, really prompted us to step that up because it is a threat. On the scale of risk, a big ballast boat is one of the highest risks because there's so many compartments inside that hold water. The lower end is a paddleboard or a simple kayak, but there's still risk. There's never zero risk. It's just a lower risk. So it has not been as much of a priority. The snails jump-started us, and we work a lot with Courtney and her team to really get that message out there. In reaction to that, one of those tactics that we did is we had roving inspectors combing the beaches in 2024. We started with 2 of them, and they would just go to popular places, Baldwin Beach, Nevada Beach, Kings Beach, and start talking to people. And they're mostly just educating them on being, someone say it.
Clean, drain, dry.
Thank you. Clean, drain, dry. Yes. And explaining to them the threat that their boats pose and how they can clean, drain, dry. So we had 2 people. It was super successful. It was a pilot project, to see, like, logistically, can the staff at the RCD who we contract with to do the hiring, can they manage 2 people? It was so successful in 2025, sorry, last year we hired 4 because it was so impressive how many connections we made. The rovers last year had 17,000 interactions with people at the beaches with non-motorized watercraft. That's 17,000 people that the year before we didn't reach. So expand that each year it's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger as we get more and more tuned in to kind of how the people flow around the lake. And that's where you guys fit in. You're going to be supplementing the things that they're doing, talking to the people and buying. And I'll get into that in a second. It's really, really, I'm super excited about the Rovers because I'm at heart an outreach person. I just end up running programs and stuff. And this is really exciting because we are having one-on-one relationships with people, interactions with people that normally you don't have. And I think it's really important to be genuine in those conversations, which is more on the next slide. But this is growing and there's so much momentum. Every time I talk to Laura Patton, she's asking me about the Rovers and the successes that we've had and the failures, because there are issues, but it's really, really exciting. And I'm really glad that you guys are here to help us promote that as much as possible. Yep, now it's Courtney's turn.
Thanks, Tom. So one of the other defenses we have is the Eyes on the Lake program. This is the Keep Tahoe Blue program that was created in 2013 to train community members, on-water businesses, marinas on how to identify and report aquatic invasive species. So this program really focused on paying attention to those key characteristics to separate the invasives from the natives, because in Tahoe, we actually do have quite a few native aquatic plant species and native snail species. And so this program is really geared towards seeing the plants up close and personal, being able to find those characteristics and know what to do if you do see an invasive out in the wild. What you can do is you report your findings on citizensciencetahoe.org, submit an Eyes on the Lake survey. And this really helps early detection and rapid response. So it's much, much easier to treat a new infestation. So if a little fragment of Eurasian water milfoil fragmented off and drifted over to the other side of the lake, you know, even with myself, even with Tom, even with all the organizations around the lake dedicated to protecting it, we're not able to be everywhere all the time. And so the more eyes we have on the lake, the quicker we're able to identify issues, potential new infestations, and the quicker we are able to escalate treatment. It's much, much easier to treat a new infestation that's just a few plants by hand pools than a 17-acre infestation at Taylor Creek. So this program is near and dear to my heart because I am a scuba diver, I'm a paddleboarder, and I love to be able to identify things. And we're planning on having some survey days this year. So tapping into the trained volunteer base to help go out and survey some areas this year. CD3 machines, who's seen these around Lake Tahoe before? You folks? CD3 stands for Clean, Drain, Dry, and Dispose machines. And these are free solar-powered cleaning machines. We have some permanent locations at Sand Harbor has one, Meeks Bay has one, Tahoe Keys Marina has one, and then there is one mobile machine that goes around to different sites. Right now it is at Elks Club because it's floating season on the Upper Truckee River. So not only is it a good education point, people don't realize that there's an aquatic invasive species issue until they see, oh, there's a machine here, I need to do something. But it also helps get things like mud, sand, dirt off, and lowers the risk of introduction. And then a defense that we have is signage. So if you've seen the sign around the lake, we clean, drain, dry to you. This just lets people around Lake Tahoe know that they should make sure to clean, drain, and dry. We do have established beaches around the lake, but there's a lot of places, even, if you look at the East Shore, where people can just park on the side of the road and walk in and launch anywhere. And so trying to strategically place these at areas where people might be walking in has been really helpful. We've also done a lot of work, Keep Tahoe Blue and the Tahoe Keepers program to help make doing the right thing a easy and positive experience. So this year we partnered for a chance to win. If you submit Eyes on the Lake surveys at citizensciencetahoe.org, or you become a Tahoe Keeper, you can be entered for a chance to win some really awesome gear throughout the summer. So lots of great incentives there. And then social media. We have a lot of social posts and videos that we'd love you to like, comment, reshare, get the word out, share it with your friends. One of the most effective ways that people learn about things is from, mouth-to-mouth communication, just chatting with your friend, chatting with your neighbor. So you all are really important in that whole process. So now I'm going to switch gears a little bit, talk about what your volunteer responsibilities will be as an Eyes on the Lake outreach volunteer. So as I mentioned, Eyes on the Lake program stemmed from, our identification and our survey program. As an outreach volunteer, your focus is going to be on communicating with the public. We still want you to be able to, walk the shoreline and report things if you see them, things like algae or aquatic invasive species, but really your core goals are going to be outreaching with the community. So before your Eyes on the Lake outreach shift, you'll come to either our South Lake location here, our Spurlock Evers Environment and Education Center, to pick up equipment, or we are so excited that we have a North Shore location this summer over at the Boatworks Mall. So you can visit either one of those locations and pick up your equipment. You'll sign up for shifts and go out to the beaches and conduct your education. You are not there to be enforcement. You'll have a vest and a hat and you'll look official. So maybe that, shows that you might have some level of enforcement, but that's not your job. You leave that up to the law enforcement officers. Your sole objective is to educate and also collect some data, which we'll get into that. And you'll have clipboard and vest like that photo there on the far side. The materials that you'll have. So you'll also have some outreach materials as you're chatting with people, asking them if they've heard about aquatic invasive species. You might get to talking about some different topics. So the first thing that you'll have in your outreach kit is golden mussel info cards. These are little quarter sheet cards that talk about golden mussels if people haven't heard of the golden mussel or are not sure why they should care. This is a great resource to be like, here, take a picture of this or give it to them. We like to not hand out, handouts willy-nilly. Like we want to be cautious of, we don't want people to take them and then just throw them in the trash. So offer these different materials to people, but you don't necessarily have to be like, take this if they don't want it. You'll also have the Tahoe Keepers wrap cards. So this is information about the Tahoe Keepers program. If anyone in here is not a Tahoe Keeper, you definitely should be. It's a great program and you'll watch a short video, take the quiz. It's really easy to be able to get that knowledge of how to clean, drain, and dry your vessel properly. And then you'll also have the Eyes on the Lake plant ID cards. These are little pamphlets on how to identify the aquatic invasive species in Lake Tahoe really easily. There's a QR code on the back that you just scan and you can submit an Eyes on the Lake survey. Super, super easy. Some things that you'll want to bring for your shift. So you'll want to make sure that you have a water bottle, a reusable water bottle that's full. A lot of areas or beaches will have water refill stations, so it's super important to stay hydrated. Bring some sunscreen and good shoes for walking on the beach. We will supply you with a hat, keep you shaded from the sun, and a nifty Keep Tahoe Blue vest. We'll also give you a clipboard. If you need pins, we can supply those. You can also bring your own. And a folder with the handout and some information about parking. So in each one of your packets, you'll have a letter. And when you get to your site that you're at, you can show the kiosk person that letter. You'll also have a little parking pass to look a little bit more official. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So you have all your materials, you signed up for your shift, you get to the beach and you park, and what do you do? How are you going to approach people, right? Like you want to make sure that you have a friendly, fun presence, like a smile on your face. No one's going to want to talk to you if you're just, sitting with your arms crossed. And keep it light, keep it fun. You're out there to engage in a fun way. So you can start with things like, are you paddling today? Have you heard of invasive golden mussels? Did you know that invasive species can alter Lake Tahoe's waters? Do you clean, drain, and dry your gear? Do you know about several invasive species that are in Lake Tahoe? Like, come check them out. Kids love that sort of thing if you're able to point things out. So these are some ways you can break the ice, so to say, and just keep things fun and engaging. You will have in your packet a flyer about the chance to win. So people love free things and being able to enter to win things. So that's also a fun thing that you can promote while you're out there. Now, I mentioned data. And so in your kit, you will have an Eyes on the Lake outreach team data sheet. So you'll fill one of these out for each day that you're out doing outreach. It'll ask you for your date, your location, and your volunteer names. If you're volunteering with a buddy, you'll put both of your names there. And what you'll be collecting is information on the number of non-motorized watercraft present during each interaction. So if you walk up to a family and they have 2 paddle boards and maybe some beach toys, a couple of floating beach flamingos, you would mark 2 for each of those categories. This just lets us know what people are bringing to beaches and where the biggest concern may lie. The next section asks, have you heard of aquatic invasive species? Yes or no? So the first portion, you see a group, you can mark those things down really quickly before you even start to talk to them. I find it's best to work in a buddy team. So maybe someone with the data sheet and the clipboard and then someone talking. So you'll ask them, have you heard of aquatic invasive species? And some people might go, no, what's that? Some people might be, yeah. If you're kind of unsure of their answer, you can ask them to name one. You can ask them to explain it, because some people might just say, oh yeah, just because you look official in a vest. So you want to make sure, again, that you stay positive and approachable. The next question is, where have you received your information about aquatic invasive species? And here you can mark social media, billboards, email, website, printed material, word of mouth, or other. And this just really lets us know how people are getting their information. This is helpful for us where, we might want to direct our resources, our outreach, how we might want to get information out to people. So that data is super helpful for that. Yes. So have you heard of aquatic invasive species? This should be your total number of interactions. So if you come up to a group of 2 people and they're both like, no, you can mark 2. This will be the total for how many people you outreach to. So I just wanted to clarify that. On the back of your sheet, the top portion is tracking what kind of information you hand out. So if people want more information about the Tahoe Keepers program, Eyes on the Lake, Golden Mussel, this just kind of helps us track when you might need a restock of materials, and also what are people interested in. There's a big section at the bottom for comments. So if you have any interesting interactions, if someone's like, wow, I've never heard of this, like, I'd love to come to the Eyes on the Lake training to learn how to identify aquatic invasive species. This is where you can leave those sort of comments and we can follow up with them. You'll notice at the very bottom says submit data to keeptahoeblue.org/AIS outreach data. So when you're on the field, you'll fill this out. When you return home, you will go to that URL and there's a form on our website where you will input the data. And then once that data is input, I get a notification and I'm able to look at that. Any questions about that process? Pretty easy and straightforward. All right, I'm going to bring Tom back up to talk a little bit about some tips from roving inspectors, because they've been out there since, 4 years, and they've learned a thing or two.
Yeah, and I haven't had a chance to look at the reporting form, and I don't. You and I can talk through this, but I think the main thing here: greet openly with a smile. That should start everything. We've learned at our inspection stations, as you approach somebody, take your sunglasses off, and then you can put them back on once that initial interaction is done. It helps personalize things. I mean, I know when I am approached by somebody with sunglasses, it just is a little bit less genuine because you can't see their eyes, and eyes are just so important to read body language, and are they engaged or just doing their checklist or whatever. But data is really, really important. I mean, McKinsey, who's supposed to be here, loves to crunch data, and that's how we know there were 17,000 interactions, and we know which outreach tactic is working. Is it signs? Is it word of mouth? Is it social media? Because she's tracking all this stuff. So data is really important. But what I don't want you to do is have your clipboard in front of you and you have to have a conversation. So one thing that this is Tom Burnt, who's been doing this the last couple of years, and he is an absolute gem. Like he is self-proclaimed with a gift of gab, and he will approach absolutely anybody in the friendliest way. You just want to hug him when you're done. And I'm not saying everyone has that gift of gab, but we used to have a tablet and they would or on their phone, and they would tally things as they were talking, and it really spoils the interaction. So what I would suggest is get down your spiel, figure out what the most important things are to record, have your conversation, and then step aside and fill that information out. Otherwise, it looks like you're just taking a survey, and you're not taking a survey. You're educating people. Another tip is they learned right away that it's really awkward and less effective if you approach people on the beach. It's better to approach them while they're at their car unloading all their crap, because it takes time. If they're blowing up their paddleboard or whatever, sometimes it works out fine, but by and large, if you can get them before they're plunked down, people kind of have that attitude of, why are you bugging me? I'm on vacation or I'm relaxing or whatever. So I think that's a really good tip, the smile thing. And then being organic and connecting with them. So if, she gave you some talking points, but it always helps as an introduction if they have a dog or a kid or some unique hat, to make that personal connection with them right away. And that drops a lot of barriers. Then they're going to be more willing to listen to you and have a conversation with you. We want it to be a conversation. You're going to have some people that will hear you that aren't going to interact, and you're going to have some people that will kind of interact, and there's going to be some people that are like, this is great, this is gold, sign me up. Be brief and helpful. You're going to get all kinds of different questions about what kind of fish are in the lake. Brevity is really important because they are recreating. This is their time. So hit the main points. Those people that do want to engage, there's no reason to be brief. Make it natural, just like you're having a conversation with a family member. And always being thoughtful about adding beach trash as part of the message. Suggest taking pictures of the garbage to fill in more data on the Citizen Science app. And I do think that chance to win is a golden opportunity, because people like free things. And if they're not super engaged, even if you bring up the chance to win and people become a Tahoe keeper, but they don't have any intention of doing it, you're still teaching them a little bit, right? If all they want is free stuff. And so one of the bigger values that we've learned with the data that McKinsey crunches is word of mouth is listed more than it was in the past. And that's one of the things we try to sell with Tahoe keepers is tell your friends, because it's such a simple message. Clean, drain, dry your stuff when you're done. Yeah, that's what I have. Some tips for outreach is this. Yeah, this is me. Again, make it fun. Like I want to ask a question when we're done with this, why you're doing this. It should be fun. You're protecting the lake. You're educating people about a serious threat. And I find value in interacting with people to understand the world better. And this is your opportunity to kind of do that, especially the people that come up here by the millions, as Courtney mentioned. If you don't know an answer to questions, it's okay to say, I don't know. Don't make things up. That's the worst thing you can do because that information will get spread. We get that quite a bit. And well, someone told me this. I'm like, well, they were wrong. Provide them resources. TahoeBoatInspections.com is kind of like the go-to place where Tahoe Keepers is linked and all the EIS information. You're not going to be able to answer everything. There's just too many questions. Again, Courtney mentioned, and you're not responsible for inspecting boats. You're responsible for telling people how they can be a responsible boater, because the whole inspection thing has a lot of innuendo to it. And definitely safety. Be prepared for weather. Bring your phone. Walk away when needed. If someone's threatening or just weird or creepy, giving you a bad vibe, it's not that important to check a box saying I interacted with that person. When you go to a site, and I think this is kind of covered, it's always good to check in if there is a kiosk or a booth of some kind, letting them know that you're going to be there. There's going to be times, and are you going to cover this kind of stuff, or should I just keep going with logistics?
You're doing great.
Okay. So our rovers are going to be out there. Yeah. They have a set schedule pretty much for the entire summer, but that schedule is going to change because things come up. If there's one beach that they're at and it's super slow because the winds are too heavy, they're going to go somewhere else so they can talk to people. And they always check in at the front or with anybody. Like Zephyr Cove, you can't get in there without having interactions with the gate. Other places you can. It's good to just let people know that you're going to be there. We're going to have a little sign at the entries that say rovers are here. So if there's a rover there and you show up, that's okay. You guys can work together, but it's important to try to connect. We'll try to find them. So the event that you interact with somebody and they already talked to a rover, they're going to say that, and then just kind of figure out a game plan of how you're going to interact, because having more people is better, especially on some of those really busy big beaches like Baldwin or Pope, where you could, cover a third of it in an entire day and not even reach everybody. So yeah, keep it fun, keep it light, and I think you're going to have fun.
Great. Thank you. All right. So what are the next steps for volunteering as an outreach team volunteer? So congratulations, you all. You have completed the training. Woohoo! Yay. The next step is going to be to take a short quiz. So there is a QR code up here if anyone's feeling eager and wants to get started on it now. We'll also send a follow-up email with this information. So you'll just put in your name, your email, you'll create a password, and this just lets us know who completed the training and how you did. You can take this multiple times, but after this training, hopefully you all should have the information. And really this just makes sure that you do have some of that core information that's important before you go out into the field. So you don't accidentally say, oh yeah, the mussels in Tahoe doesn't have any mussels. So we want to make sure that we're spreading correct information. The next step after you take the quiz is you're going to need your equipment. So you're going to email eyesonthelake@keeptahoeblue.org to schedule a time to pick up equipment. Daria, who is our engagement associate, is going to be available next week on Wednesday and Thursday from 1 to 4 if you're available then to come pick it up. If not, we'll work with your schedule. Just shoot us an email, let us know when's convenient for you, and we'll do our best to accommodate that. The reason we have you come in also to pick up equipment is some of the sites that you may be going to are U.S. Forest Service sites, and we do have a volunteer agreement with the U.S. Forest Service, and so we'll also need you to complete their waiver as well. The next step would be to sign up for your shifts. So we're focusing our efforts on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday holidays. One thing that we did learn from last year is that these were the most busiest times in the morning, on the weekends, when people are there to visit the beaches all day with their family. That's really like when we have the most interaction. So we really wanted to focus our efforts on there because there's a lot of areas that we're hoping to cover this year, and focusing on those mornings from 7 to 11 a.m. If you're able to carpool with someone or ride your bike, parking is sometimes a little bit tricky at these locations, but we worked out a system with most of these. So yeah, and so these are the different sites that we're hoping to offer the Eyes on the Lake outreach teams. So if any of these are your favorite or you frequent often, that's a great place to start. We're asking people to sign up by Wednesday, the Wednesday before the weekend, just so we have an idea of where volunteers are going, where we might need to recruit other volunteers for.